Let's see. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see how this works. Make sure that it goes through the way it's supposed to. Yep. Hi, Nathan. What's up, bro? It's always a good pleasure to have you here, man. You know what I'm saying? Always a good pleasure to have you here. We've had many discussions already in the past, so this one's always going to be a good one, right? This one's actually about the Virgin Mary. Something that interesting about this is that I actually have a book set like right next to me about the Virgin Mary, and they go back to the 1600s and stuff. We talked about it in the past before, and I was actually watching one of your videos, which I'm going to play in a minute, play part of, so that people can get an idea of what was so interesting. But yeah, the information that you share is extraordinary because you're a Gnostic, right? You're a Gnostic. You read a lot, you research a lot, and you share all this stuff on your YouTube channel, right? So,
Yep.
you know, what made you want to do this video on the Virgin Mary when you first did it?
Well, it explains a lot about the historical Jesus of who he was. And one reason I actually got into this business, if you will, was to find the historical Jesus, to know who he was. And Mary plays a part in this story. As in the earliest text, Mary is the first one mentioned. Joseph comes later, around the same time as the Roman soldier Pentara. So that's quite interesting. So Mary's story, being raised in the temple as a dove, being mentioned in the Proto-Gospel of James, which was banned from the Bible, rejected, banned by the Pope, I meant to say. And in this text, it mentions Mary being offered to the temple and leaving there at the age of 12 and being gifted to Joseph. But in this text, it mentions she was dwelling in the temple as a dove, and virgin brides and priestesses raised in temples were called doves. We've discussed that a few times in the past as well. These were virgin brides, sacred virgin brides. This was throughout ancient cultures. And as you had a chat with me a couple of days ago, you were mentioning your findings that this was also found in Samaria as well.
Yeah, man. It's crazy, man, because I don't know if I showed you this book, man, but I got this book right here, man. And I'm going through it like crazy, all these tabs, bro. And the amount of information in here and the history is making me wonder, you know, who were really the Sumerians? And I hate to just say the Sumerians, so I like to say the Mesopotamians, because a lot of people say Sumerians. I like to say the Mesopotamians. And that right there is like, it's just crazy. And we'll get into it later. I don't want to, you know, get into it right now. But yeah, a lot of what you said and what I've, you know, watched from your videos and then researched behind you, I found somewhere in the Sumerian text, not just, you know, in their mythology, but in their history, their laws, and so on and so forth. So yeah.
I also liked how you brought up something a while ago with the letters on the walls, as the Jewish people would recite prayers and place them in the walls.
Oh yeah, the walls when they did the little writing on the paper and you put it on the walls. Yeah, I was telling you about that yesterday. I was reading something and I showed you too. I had to go through those tabs, but they actually had something. I think they called it like, oh man, I can't even remember the term they used for it now. But it was like a prayer. They'll write something and put it in their wall. And it'll be in the wall of any deity that was in that city state. So it could be Anne, or it could be Ishtar, or it could be Ningazita, or Enki, or Enlil, or Nihursaga. It could have been any of those, right? And they would just put their little prayer right on there, on a not so much as a piece of paper, but like I don't even know what they actually called it, because I don't know the term that they used. I can't remember. I just read it the other day and it was interesting. I was like, wow, man, that reminds me of the thing where people put on writing, you know, little papers and put it. So I don't know what it's called or whatnot, but yeah, it was definitely in there.
Yep, which is interesting. But even regarding women in temples, we found this in ancient Samaria as well. This is nothing new. Women were regarded as sacred, especially the priestesses. We would label a lot of these priestesses now as sacred prostitutes, though this wasn't the case in the ancient past. The term prostitute could apply to a dancer back then, etc. But regarding Mary, some state that she was a prophetess in her own right because she was telling visions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, she regarded her virgin birth story, though this virgin birth story somewhat came a little bit later. We have older sources of Jesus being adopted.
Mm-hmm.
But still, in the stories of Jesus being adopted, Mary is stated as his biological mother. A lot of these ones who believe Jesus was adopted, his biological father was Joseph, and to others, in some Gnostic sects, it was Pentara, which is quite interesting. And some ancient Jews believed the same. We can find references of this somewhat in the Talmud and in the writings of Celsus, who was an opponent of Christianity. But if you'd like to play that video as well, Tyrone, you're welcome to play the video.
Let's play that video real quick, because it's before we get too far deep into this. Let's do that. Where was it? Oh man, what did I do with it? Here we go.
So on a spiritual level of being, where you have a spiritual level of being, I want to discuss, was the Virgin Mary a prophetess? And let's also dive into temple priestesses, temple prostitutes, and holy sacred brides. Now, some Christians today and Christian scholars today and Christians of the ancient past had the belief and have the belief that the Virgin Mary is a prophetess or a prophet in her own right. As in the Gospel of Luke, she's described as being visited by an angel, to which she's able to tell a prophecy of her future pregnancy of giving birth to the Messiah, Jesus. Now, there were prophetesses and prophets in the past, oracles, belonging to both males and females, that received divine insights and told future prophecies. So thus, they would have considered Mary a prophetess or a prophet due to this. Now, in the Gospel of John 7.52, I want to present to you a different translation, an alternative translation that Christian scholars will hide from you as it will upset their beliefs. So let's go into this. All right, here's the traditional. Well, they answered, "Are you also from Galilee? Study the scriptures and you'll learn that no prophet ever comes from Galilee." Now, here's how this can also translate. They answered and said to him, "Art thou also of Galilee? Search and see, no prophet arises from a Galilean prophetess." Now, the word prophet in Greek does not apply to just one gender. It can belong to both male and female. So here we have something that's a little bit different. Now, the Virgin Mary is also considered the patron saint of Catholicism, being the mother of Jesus. She was considered not dying a mortal death, but rather ascending to heaven. Now, in the Gospel of James, or Proto-Gospel of James, Mary is described as being raised in the temple and being that of a miracle birth herself, to which her mother is too old and gives birth, and thus offers Mary as an offering to the temple to be raised there as a virgin, to be married off as a holy bride at the age of 12. Now, she's placed in the care of Joseph, who is already considered too old to pass on his seed and has already had his own children and is a widower. Now, these children would later be the stepbrothers of Jesus. Stepbrothers. Now, this being said, they accused Joseph of sleeping with Mary, to which he says he's innocent and that she's innocent of adultery. She didn't commit adultery, and that this is a gift from God. So it's seen as a miracle. So in this place here, being raised in the temple, this is important because in Matthew 21.12, we have something specific that I'm going to mention now. Now, Matthew 21.12, we have doves being sold. Now, this doesn't just mean doves. This is a flock of doves, meaning the sacrificial animals and young priestesses or temple brides, holy virgin temple brides, that were often associated with doves, as were temple priestesses.
This game, you're not ready for it.
I was going to say, you might have to skip that.
I got you, bro. I'm trying to get rid of it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Now,
There we go.
here, this is why Jesus gets angry, because his mother was one of these girls raised in the temple. This is why he takes over the temple for 3 days. Now, in Mark 11.15, Jesus banned something from being driven into the courtyards, from being taken out of the temple into the courtyards. This was the temple drugs being used to drug up the young girls, to give them visions, so that way they'll be holy brides, and one of them would give birth to the Messiah, or Son of God. Son of God in Hebrew, meaning a human being with a personal relationship with God, and in Greek, someone who's been reborn and adopted by God. So the Jewish elites wanted a Messiah of the upper class. The reason why I say they wanted a Messiah of the upper class, as these virgin girls would be auctioned off to the high priestly class and the kings, as often the high priest of Judea were also the kings. Now, these virgin brides, of which that would be married off to the upper class, would be considered worthy to be able to carry the Messiah. And thus, Joseph being of a lower stock, or Mary not being married to a higher class, would be considered not as worthy of the rank of Messiah. So they wanted someone of the priestly class to be raised by them, not someone that was an outsider to be their Messiah. Now, in the ancient past, there were many Jewish messiahs, and the zealots would often anoint their own messiahs. These temple prostitutes, temple priestesses, and holy virgin brides would be traced back to ancient fertility cults. Now, the place that Jesus referred to that got mistranslated as hell, Gehenna, was also a place that the Canaanites would sacrifice their children to Baal. Now, some of these children were born from the temple priestesses or temple prostitutes out of the temple. Now, oftentimes they were temple priestesses that were associated with temple prostitutes in a way to discredit them. Now, the scene with Matthew 21.12, where Jesus frees the children. They were victims of the sex trade. They were the doves. This is why the children are praising Jesus, saying, "Praise be the Son of David." So Jesus saved them. The prostitutes that were associated with Jesus were victims of the sex trade that he liberated. Okay, so let's go read Matthew 21.12. Jesus went into the temple and drove out all those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the stalls of those who sold doves, and said to them, "It is written in the scriptures that God said, 'My temple will be called a house of prayer, but you will make it a hideout of thieves.'" Now here, hideout should be a den, which is spelion, which is also a grotto. Now, a grotto was a place where oracles would do drugs to tell prophecies. Now, this is also a meaning of grotesque, a disgusting place. Now, thieves, lestus also means predator. Predator, thieves of children. Let's continue. The blind and the crippled came to him in the temple, and he healed them. The chief priest and the teachers of the law became angry when they saw the wonderful things he was doing. The children shouting in the temple, "Praise to David's son." So they were praising Jesus because he saved them. As I said, the temple prostitutes, they were victims of the sex trade. So these were young girls to be auctioned off as virgin brides against their will, raised there in the temple. Now, they were also given temple drugs in order to induce prophecy. They are raised up to learn the Torah and to know it. So they were holy women of upper class, reserved for the upper class. So if Joseph was of lower stock and was placed to be the carer of Mary, this would be frowned upon. Now, some people, and also those who were opponents of ancient Christianity, and including some ancient Christians, had the belief that Jesus' father was Pentera, which was a Roman Phoenician Canaanite soldier. Now, this would make Jesus half Canaanite and half Jewish, and would also explain why he was more lenient towards the Romans. Now, others believed that his father was Joseph. These myths arose around the same time as people wanted to know where Jesus came from. Now, the Ebionites upheld the belief that Jesus was of a normal birth and that his father was Joseph. Now, this belief was also along with the Canaanites, who also believed that Jesus' father was Joseph. Some minor Gnostic groups had the belief that Jesus' father was a Roman soldier. Now, there were some Christians that even believed, and ones who were opponents of Christianity, that believed that Mary was sexually assaulted, some of which believed that she committed adultery or that she fell in love with this Roman soldier and he died before they were able to be married. Now, this is all theories. Now, these arose around the 1st century, which is interesting. As I said, people wanted to know where Jesus came from as Christianity gained in popularity. Now, the real focus should be his message. Now, the name Pantera or Pantera also means panther, born of a virgin, or virgin born. So this means that Jesus' name could also be Jesus born of a virgin, being
Also
symbolic.
starborn.
Now, not all Christians
Born
had the
of a
belief
Virgo.
that Jesus was born of a virgin. Rather, the Gnostic Christians had the belief that the
What was that, bro?
It can also mean born under a star, like in Greek, Pantera can mean born under the star of the Virgo. So that can be even regards to with Mary being virgin born herself. With the Zoroastrians that are said to have visited Jesus at his birth, I'm not too sure if that's historical or not.
Right, right.
But Zoroastrians that visit Mary. Now, if she belonged to an Essene family, which highly is likely, as many Essenes were the ones that accepted Jesus first as a Messiah, they were also friends of Zoroastrians. So the Zoroastrians, I was about to say Zoroastrianism, but they were friends of the Zoroastrians. The Pharisees also recognized the Zoroastrians as people of God as well. So they recognized their religion, which wouldn't be spoken about in modern Judaism.
Right.
Now,
right.
Cyrus the Great, he was a Zoroastrian Persian king, and he was made Messiah of the Jewish people. The Sadducees wouldn't have recognized him, which is the Second Temple period. Later, after Cyrus' death, the Pharisees still did. They didn't mind the term Messiah, but they were wary on it. The Messiah had to be a part of their traditions, and thus the young girls being raised in the temple to give a Messiah that is a part of their traditions. And when I mentioned that video before, young girls being raised in the Torah, not quite, more orally. So,
Right.
yeah. So the Pharisees had an oral tradition being passed on, which they preferred over text, as they rejected certain text as well. So they preferred to pass on orally. So they didn't want people to go read, say, the Greek Septuagint, which is a complete Bible, which was the only complete Bible during that time. They were just individual texts that all the Jewish people were arguing over which one was precise. And when I mentioned Jesus going into the temple, cracking a shit, this could be, in the Christian eyes, Jesus stating that I'm the Messiah now. You don't need to continue this practice. But I think human being wise, he's seeing his mother being a victim of a sex trade. He's seeing it continuing with young girls, and he has a following because he takes the crowd to the temple. I think he took it over to honor his mother and to stop the trade. And that's specifically why the Pharisees and Sadducees state, but what authority do you do this by? The Sadducees having a part to play in it, even though they didn't believe in a Messiah, but they were the ones in charge of the gold. So the Pharisees paying tribute to the Sadducees in this form, the Sadducees in turn allowing outsiders to come into the temple to take part of this practice and in change. So they were converting currency over at top dollar. So another word for why they say they called them thieves, but he didn't call them thieves. He called them predators and pirates and human traffickers and rebels. So it was a common practice to give your children to the temple as well, especially if you had other children. You already had your heirs. So you had 6 children. The youngest one was given to the temple. Sometimes the firstborn even. It was a revered practice, but usually they were placed there in servants of the temple. It was usually those of upper nobility that would become priest or priestesses, though it still did occur amongst the lowest classes. But it could even be done as a form of punishment. A father upset with his son because he decided to take up poetry instead of his craft of making siege weapons. All right, enough of you little shit. You're going to the temple, you're being a monk instead. No love life for you. You know, so
bro, when I'm telling you, I just got done reading some of that stuff of what you just talked about from the Oxford Handbook of Cuneiform Culture, bro. Now we know that whole area is Mesopotamia or around about, right? They have the same similar stories. We just don't know who picked what gods to represent from, the first set of gods. And we're not even going to get into that, but it's crazy that I read in this book that for maturity in those ancient times, from the Sumerians, the Akkadians, the Assyrians, the Hittites, it doesn't even matter, right? The Babylonians, Chaldeans, whatever. The maturity age was 14 to 15 years old. That's about the same age that Mary supposedly got pregnant
Yep.
and also had Jesus.
Yep. Around 12 to 14, depending on what sources. The older sources were 14. But
yeah,
in regards to that,
it was 14, 15 years old. It definitely said 14, 15.
yeah,
It said depending on the region, the culture, of course, but 1
even
year
the age
here
of
and
marriage,
there.
Tyrone, how we were talking about this a couple of days ago as well, and this was even in Mesopotamian regions as well. It was at the age of puberty, basically, and that could be as young as 9 even, and that was pretty messed up back then. But virgins back then could be 9 to 14 as well, as late as 14, maybe as late as 18, depending on the circumstances. Depending on the circumstances, but I don't think so. It'd be more like 16. That'd be more reserved. The older would be more for nobility, for that sort of reason, for alliances. Otherwise they were basically the women, the children, until they were women, were raised carefully by the said family of the royal family to make sure they were virgins by that age to be passed off to, say, a prince. And even a king. Kings often having more than one wife, having outlived their previous wives, being married 2 or 3 times because people died of childbirth back then quite commonly. So it was quite common for someone to have even 3 or 4 wives in his one lifetime. It's a common practice amongst ancient Judean families for a said brother, if he died, even because sons died all the time in war. If one son died, that wife, instead of becoming a widow, would then marry that younger brother or older brother, depending on the situation, which is interesting.
Yeah. That's definitely
with regards to the historical Jesus, I find something interesting as well. That's something not many people mention, and that's writings of Hegesippus of the 2nd century and Eusebius, who wrote later in the 4th century, of the sons of Jude and James the Just, Jesus' brothers, the brothers of Jesus. So they're recorded as having children. But the interesting thing about the recordings of these men, as they only recorded the male stock of the family, females weren't as important around this time, especially by the 4th century. They whinged that these particular individuals were Jewish Christians and not of orthodoxy, which is quite funny. So a different form of Christianity in regards to them, because they kept the Jewish law. They were in charge of the Israelite church, or the bishops of Jerusalem, basically, was another little honorable title for them. And out of nowhere, Marcus takes charge, and he was a Roman, and then he moves the church capital to Rome, and that's fishy. So yeah, it's very interesting. So I see there's a big hijacking there as well.
Well, let me ask you, so why do you think this is important to know? Why is it important for us to know what happened to Mary and how Jesus came to be?
Well, I think it's important because it shows the nasty actions of the past, and we should be doing better. And it shows what has been done in the name of religion and still goes on today, which is horrible. It goes on in, say, Islamic countries, child brides, and other places that aren't as civilized as, say, us here in the West, which is a primitive practice. Here we're in a more civilized world, and we shouldn't allow this nastiness to continue. Also, Jesus stood up against it in my eyes. So if you really love Jesus and you want to follow Jesus, it should be no shocker to you to be like Jesus. And take a part of what he believed to be honorable is to basically to not do the same shit as what they were doing. So Jesus had a different eye. He was called a blasphemer by his own people because he allowed other people outside their own religion to follow him. And I see that as a message of oneness as well, where religion today of people that follow Jesus kill in Jesus' name. Other than that, not as much today. But thankfully, not as much today. But in regards to that, people still argue in Jesus' name, fight in his name, and call other people devil worshippers. pagans, heathens, etc., slur insults or even bash people in Jesus' name, thinking they're doing a good deed. People do horrible deeds in the name of God. And this is something that Jesus was opposed to. And so if you want to know the historical Jesus, I say this is important to know. It was important for me to know, to find the historical Jesus himself. And
because he flipped out too. He flipped out. He flipped out.
Yeah.
Just imagine what was going through his mouth when he flipped out.
Yeah.
Flipping a table? Come on. You don't say nice things when you flip a table. My gosh, I'm going to flip this table. I'm angry right now. No, you'll be like, man, what the fuck? You know, or whatever language you, however your curse words are in that language, that's what you're going to use. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So but see, this is the thing, that the theories that come with it about what happened, because in a sense, yes, the Virgin Mary was young when she had Jesus. That's what it is. And some people will make an argument that that's how it was in those times. Well, no, we can't go off of that. We can't make rules depending on what makes you feel good, right? Wrong is wrong, right is right. That's just plain and simple as that, right? So, and we know there was a time when we don't know who Jesus was. So Jesus could have literally went through a phase like every human that went uppers and downers. We don't know what he went through. At the end of his lifetime, when he was more wise, or towards the end of his lifetime when he was more wise, he did things differently. Some of us do it much later. Some of us do it at the age of 30. Some of us do it at 40. Some do it at 50. Some never do it at all. Yeah. Right. But he went around and traveled and gained knowledge from different places. He learned different things, and he was seeing what was happening in the name of God's, sacrifice of children. We have that all the way. I hear people say all the time that, in Mesoamerica, the natives there were sacrificing children. Well, guess what? The Romans were doing the same exact thing. So talk about that too. Don't shun just one group of individuals. Do everybody that participated in that type of stuff. And the Roman people absolutely did. As a matter of fact, everybody probably did in every religion. There was a sacrificial of children. That was their way of doing things. I don't know what would go through somebody's mind to do that, but that was a thing that happened. Yeah. And we know that there were young women, or I shouldn't say young women, young girls getting pregnant before the age of what we understand is maturity of today, right? Like I said earlier, back then they considered it 14. Now, depending on however that goes around in that time frame, that's what they did. Today we consider mostly 18 and above, right? And even then they say not even 18 is an indicator of being mature or having maturity, right? Yeah, it goes all the way up to 25 in some cases. So it's just, to me, what was how can I picture in my head that Mary was chosen by God to bring God into human form, into what we know as Jesus? Now, this whole book set that I was telling you about that I have right here, it literally talks in it, like when you talked earlier about the visions and stuff from earlier, Mary of Agreda was she was in a venerable Mary. She was venerable in I can't remember the exact location she was at, but she got visions from the Virgin Mary herself. And there's a lot in Catholicism, this is very respected throughout the community, especially in the Catholic Church, because there's a lot of people who signed off on this and say, hey, you need to read this. This is how I found this book set. Right. And it's pretty good book set, man. I mean, I showed you before how good it is. It's from the Tan Company. And it has volume 1 is the conception, volume 2 is the incarnation, 3 is transfixion, and the 4th one is coronation. Now, what I've read is that there are actually 8 book sets. So the 4 book set that I have here there's 4 more books within these sets. I don't know how they changed it up, but anyway, it talks about how she got these visions from Mary herself. Now, throughout the Bible, we have visions given throughout so many people: Ezekiel, Jacob, all these different individuals. Moses, when he seen the burning bush or sometime, or the light on the mountain, and so on and so forth. That was a vision that he seen, because some people say it's with the 2 eyes. Some people say that it's in the meditative state. vision. And she said she got, and we believe these visions that these people talk. So why wouldn't we believe somebody else who has this? Well, I can't tell you, and I personally can't tell anybody what they experience through their own visions, through their own meditative state, their own astral projections, lucid dreaming, so on and so forth. I can't tell you what you experience, but there were books written about it, and they were highly recommended. So when I read these books, it literally says in here that God chose Mary from the get-go. Like he chose, like Mary had to be just as perfect as he was to bring his perfection into the world physically. Right? You can't have a flawed device in anything that you want to make sure that life is dependent on it, right? And in many cases, Jesus was supposed to save us from our sins, and there's so many different theories about how he was supposed to save us and how he saved us, because some people don't even believe that he died on the crucifix. And there's actually a village in, I think it's Shango village in Japan, that actually says they have the burial site of Jesus. So there's all these different theories, but the idea of who Jesus is, we get these from different people, right? Jesus didn't take a diary down himself, and Mary didn't take a diary down of herself, and or at least we don't have it to the general public, right? And it talks about, like I said, how God chose Mary to be the perfect woman or person to bring him into the physical form. Now, everything was about her. Now, I remember reading in this book, and it's in the Bible too, if you read the Bible, and it's in their different texts, depending on the different Bibles and texts, because everybody has different books in their Bibles and all this other stuff. But anyway, Joseph didn't even, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joseph almost left Mary when he found out she was pregnant. He was like, yo, I'm about to go. He's like, I didn't have any relationship with her. I didn't do anything. Pregnant. Right? So he had to be talked into by an angel or somebody, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, in a dream.
Yeah, to stay. And that this was his mission. Now, like you said back then, men had many wives. That was a tradition. I mean, that was actually a status. Well, not even a status, actually, because some of the poorest men had multiple wives, right? They were. It's crazy to just think that Joseph may have, because Joseph was a lot older than Mary. I've read that he had to be an adult. Every text that I've personally read was that he was an adult. Some people say that he was really, and I'm going to give you a rough estimate, 18 to 60 years old.
Yep.
That's what I've read. Those were the
I really
multiple
think he was
different
an added in person as well. Like, I don't think anyone really knew his father's name, and maybe just mother was renowned. I think the reason why is because Mary was, when she's raised in the temple, reason she's offered is she's of the bloodline of David, and Joseph might be this made-up character. So put stock in more of that David, maybe. Maybe he didn't even come of the line of David. Who knows? It's all theory. But he was definitely educated. He could write. He traveled.
Yeah, Jesus. Yeah. And writing. And matter of fact, you saying that writing was a very important thing. Reading and writing was a very important thing. Like that. Yeah. When you talked about the children going to the temples and to these different places and stuff, at a certain age, they were in many ways gifted to these different places. Like even sons, like even the little boys, they were sent to these places to learn how to read and write. Yeah. They had to learn how to hunt or whatever the place, the area needed. Like you didn't get to pick your own job. You had to perfect the job that they wanted to give you based on what you could do. Like if you was a blind person, of course you couldn't do anything. So they had many women and boys and girls in temples who were blind, who would play instruments, like hundreds just throughout, just playing instruments, because their families couldn't take care of them. So they sold them off to the richest individuals, that had the money and so on and so forth. And they would pay these individuals in certain types of foods and silver. Most of the women got gold and silver, or shekels, as some would call them. And when you mentioned the word prostitute, that was in reality entertainment for those places. It wasn't always like, I think we talked about in our last discussion. It wasn't always sexual. Yes, it was. And later became that's what it is today. But before, it wasn't always that. It was more of an entertainment type thing. And then the entertainment thing became into, what we have today. Right.
Yep.
And that in those times they actually have depictions throughout or they had, I should say, depictions of all kinds of erotic type of stuff throughout there. I mean, even in the Roman times, the Greek times, that stuff was out there in the open, for everybody to see.
As well. There was a belief that Yahweh had a penis, and it talked about how big it was and all sorts of shit like that. There was even beliefs that Asherah was a hermaphrodite of sorts, having a penis as well, which is interesting. Like,
it's funny you say that too. It's funny you say that too, because hermaphrodites is mentioned in this a lot, a lot. So that's why I said that area is so full, rich of information that a lot of people don't understand. Just picking up the books and reading them. There's books. I'm telling you.
I want to bring something up to Tyrone. How I brought up something before, because Jesus had lots of different followers. He had Greeks, Zoroastrians, Persians following him, and he had Essenes, obviously. He had Canaanites, he had Zealots even following him. But he had a different approach to life as well. Oh, yeah, I see the video. It's beautiful with the camera too. But in regards to with sexuality, Jesus didn't care in regards to a scene with a centurion's lover, if you remember me showing you that before. I don't know if you can share the screen, but if you can you share the word on Bible Hub?
Which one?
Matthew 8.6 in regards to Jesus being the servant. PS in Greek, basically, which doesn't quite mean servant.
Greek translation.
Yeah, in Matthew 8.6.
Yeah, hold on. Because this is, I'm going to show you what was popping up on my screen. Hold on, let me move this one to my other screen real quick. All right, screen share. Stop screening on that one. Screen share. This is what was showing up on my screen right here.
Yep. Okay. This is the word for it says in servant. So when Jesus heals the Roman centurion servant, no, he's actually healing the Roman centurion's lover. Child, boy, youth. It's also here, I've got here, boy, youth, child, usually below the age of puberty, not necessarily male, a personal servant, slave, attendant, with a possible implication of a kind of regard or close relationship. Now, it could also mean a male concubine as well. So male concubine is the extent of meaning often payas, is used as male slave child, sexual or non-sexual, so not always sexual. It could be a case of someone taking on a younger soldier, passing on their craft, and they were also lovers, which was a common thing. They didn't have a word for homosexual back then. Now, that being said, I would say this centurion would have been bi, because it was still expected that they take on a wife to pass on offspring. But they were expected to take on a male lover, especially in ancient Greece. So if he was a Greek centurion, basically, so Greek serving in the Roman army, that would also explain that, which I find more likely, as it was a common thing in the ancient Greek world, is regard of brotherhood, having a male younger lover that you could pass on your craft to as well. In Athens, families used to have to hire bodyguards for their children to protect them from the older men trying to seduce them. So, but here we have Jesus not caring about someone's sexuality. And this was changed because Christians became homophobic. But this being said, I don't think it was a child lover, because in the scene in Matthew 21.12, we have Jesus cracking the shit, calling them pirates and predators and saving children. So here I think this centurion was gay, had a lover, or bisexual, and he didn't care. So he's saying love was love. And many ancient Gnostic Christians, this is the hint where you find the actions of Jesus. They were running through brothels, saving children. They didn't care if someone was homosexual or lesbian. They were also practicing and screaming out equality of men, women, and children. They were also freeing and protecting women slaves from brothels as well. The Romans viewed this as a threat, as it was an act of rebellion. To them, it was slaves rebelling against them, even though it was people freeing them. But this, they couldn't have this, so they were feeding them lions and executing them as rebels. Christ was also killed as rebel. So to stop the whole martyrdom, they edited the text and took control of the religion. Constantine, in the case, even exiled some other Christians, being Gnostics as well. He wasn't as harsh as what the Roman Catholics were doing, or the Catholic Church before them. They were persecuting and killing Gnostics, but that was around the late 2nd century, 3rd century, and 4th, especially after Constantine's time, which being 3rd and 4th century. So that's interesting. He also had a bunch of people there in this so-called council, a bunch of different diverse Christians, to put together what they accepted as canon, because 200 years before this, Marcion compiled the first Christian Bible.
Right.
It was done in Greek, as all the earliest Christian texts are all done in Greek. There were some Syriac texts, but they're sort of copied from the Greek, or maybe some sentences of Greek were copied from them, but only small references. But only the 15% of the sayings of Jesus regarding the canonical text is considered authentic. So the oldest Christian scripture there is in regards to Jesus is the Gospel of Thomas, which is written around 30 AD, about 30 years after his death, copied from the original, which could have been from the actual time Jesus was alive, which is very interesting. And a lot of ancient Christians believe that it was written by Jude, who they believe Jude to be the twin brother of Jesus, who they believe to be Judas Thomas as well. Some also believe that this Thomas figure who wrote the Gospel of Thomas was Thomas the Doubter. But Gospel of Thomas contains the historical sayings of Jesus. We find here very Gnostic teachings. So in regards to Jesus freeing children, regards to Gnostic Christians freeing children, I see this as people being above their time, recognizing what evil was. We also had different factions of Judaism. We had the Pharisees, Sadducees, and Essenes and Zealots. But the Pharisees, they believed in the resurrection of the dead. They rejected certain texts, but except the 24 text. They believed in spirits and angels and a Messiah. The Sadducees did not believe in an afterlife. They believed once you were dead, that was it. The soul disappeared and turned to dust with it. They only accepted the first 5 books of Moses. They did not believe or accept in a Messiah figure at all. So there's Christians that say that there's no Judaism without a Messiah. That's totally false. So many ancient Jews and Jews today do not believe in a Messiah figure. And some don't even want a Messiah figure back then, especially because they believed that it was an act of war as well. Some viewed anyone claiming to be a Messiah was basically a revolutionarist. So a revolutionary fighter, which is interesting too. So they viewed it with suspicion. So Judaism was very diverse. Then you had the Essenes. They believed the soul was immortal. They rejected all forms of sacrificing, believing sacrificing was evil and God didn't want it. But those who worship Yahweh were big on sacrificing. Even human sacrificing was acceptable. But Christians claimed that God banned human sacrificing. He does not accept them. Jesus, God did, yes. And in the Old Testament verses that it claims that God rejected it, this is in regards to El Elyon, the father of Yahweh, who was merciful, loving, and compassionate, forgiving. And he was a problem to some Israelites and a problem to Canaanites because he was too peaceful. And it's like, we can't have that. We need Yahweh. And then Yahweh was too vengeful and violent. It's like, we can't keep winning battles. We can't raid everyone, and we can't raid our own people all the time. We're getting conquered by our neighbors. We're going to mix in some El in here, so we got some love here. So we got a mixture of this war, jealous God mixed in with love and compassion. We had the Essenes that believed that Yahweh inherited Israel. We find this in the Dead Sea Scrolls. We also find this in the Greek Septuagint, that El Elyon allows Yahweh to inherit Israel. But not all ancient Jews had this belief. Some rejected Yahweh. Like Jesus, for instance, he calls Yahweh the devil in John 8:44. This is the only being he calls the devil. Some people believe Satan's the devil, but Yahweh, in one of my videos I mentioned, is even referred to as Satan, because Satan just means adversary or accuser. Say we're playing Xbox together, man, and I'm versing you. You're my Satan and I'm your Satan, your adversary. So it's not always a bad thing.
Yeah,
It's so,
you're right. You're right.
but the
You're right.
Pharisees are the one who believed that Satan was a particular angelic figure that served Yahweh to seduce mankind away from God, so that way mankind had free will. Other Jewish people completely rejected that notion, believing God was the perfect balance of good and evil. Others believing that God was only good and that evil was a man invention of basically a split from God, which is interesting. We had the Jewish mystics would have been big on that belief, especially being God within, that you are gods, etc. Jesus stating this stuff, showing that Jesus was a Jewish mystic. He was trying to bring about a universal form of Judaism, if you will, spirituality. So
Right.
some texts claim that he was not there to destroy the law. Others claim that he was there to destroy the law, which is what Christians don't like to talk about, such as the letters of Marcion, which is older than the said gospel of, I think it's Luke, he made his own version of, they said, but that gospel Luke we have today could have been a different version as well. It's a bunch of different texts added in together, basically, somewhat, which is interesting. It's all written later. But even the Gospel of John has Mandaean influence, has Gnostic influence, Revelation as well. Could have been written by Cerinthius, I believe is the name.
Uh-huh.
He was a Gnostic Christian of the 1st century and possibly a student of and follower of John. There was efforts in the 2nd century after his death, so that's basically 100 years after his death, or 150 years after his death, in efforts to state that he was not the author of Revelation and Gospel of John, such as Irenaeus. So, and I wouldn't trust anything from Irenaeus because he was a heresy hunter. He might have been a bishop, but he was writing against people saying they were demons and encouraged people to exile them from their homes and bash them and beat them and kill them if they had to. And then because of his writings, even worse heresy hunters took shape and form and started killing and burning people, and all in the name of Jesus. But Jesus was preaching forgiveness and love. So
Right.
Christianity really fell because these people were of the Roman Church that usurped Christianity. The mark of the beast means a rank and order or poisonous animal. So if you think about this rank and order and poisonous animal, a poisonous animal of high rank usurping the order of Christianity. So with Gnostic texts, they were warning about the rising power of the Roman Church who would kill in Jesus' name. And they certainly did. So we see the closest to the teachings of Jesus were the Gnostics. And if you see what the Gnostics were doing and you see the teachings of Jesus within the earlier text, you see exactly why it's been censored and banned. And if you look in the history of brothels within the Catholic Church, they were running them. So this practice was going on for a long time, especially when they became Roman. It became a Roman religion, head of state. They, in turn, ran brothels, viewing it as a necessary evil. So, of course, they want to stop people from challenging their trade that they were making money from. So Gnostics were called heretics and they were killed.
You know, it's crazy because you know, I can't find one thing that Jesus did in the Bible to end up the way he did. You know what I mean? Like, no matter how the story goes, just to think that the only thing that he was trying to teach people was to be a good person. That's all he was trying to teach people. Heal people. You know, stop being greedy. You know, take the time to help somebody else. You know, love somebody else. You know, take care of somebody else, help somebody else. All, I mean, that's his teachings was nothing but good. So for him to end up the way he did is crazy, but it's just the theories, like how you presented, like who these children were, or these younger individuals were in these temples and these places, is interesting to know that, you know, that some people will argue that it was just the way those times were back then, but will turn around and contradict themselves, and we won't even get into that. But for the most part, that, you know, I don't care how crazy the story is, picturing it just makes it that much worse. Like, how did Mary get pregnant at 14, 15? How did she give birth to to what we call God? How did this happen? Why did God choose her age? Why couldn't he wait till she was a much older age? Why not saying 14 is a mature age to do that type of stuff? is he saying that? You
Well,
know,
something you
because
mentioned a while ago that's really good as well, and I like this theory that something happened to her in the temple, and Joseph was a bit funny on it after hearing it, and then decided to take her on, recognizing what happened to her wasn't her fault. So
yeah,
that's
yeah, that's
that could damn well be the very case of it all.
yeah. I really believe that. Like he left because he thought that something else happened. But then when she told him and he knew his woman, or that's what at her time, that's what the maturity level of them, that's what he would call her. He knew his wife, he knew his significant other. He knew her enough to say, hey, something wasn't right then. And he stayed. But it was through what you said, a vision, right? Like
Thanks, yeah, a dream.
that mean a dream, like, right? So that means he had to think about it. He was really, really thinking, and something just did not add up. And that's why they had to leave. That's
Yeah.
why he took her and left. And they traveled in dangerous places to get away from that. Like with a child.
Yeah.
And I know in this book it says that I think it was like 10,000 angels helped them along their way through their travels and something like that. But when you look up the Strong's Concordance for an angel, all that means is a messenger.
Hmm.
You know? That's just basically what it is. This is just a messenger.
And the messengers go with Zoroastrian divine messengers and stuff. You know, they're sort of angelic figures. But even the Zoroastrians that were there, they were said to have received a dream vision as well, warning them. So I regard that as well, because they were heavy, users of opium and cannabis as well for their dream visions. I suggest they pass out a vision like that and said their little prophecies and over prophecies. But I just think that was a Zoroastrian add-in, because even with the story of Jesus wandering in the desert, being tempted by Satan, Zoroaster is tempted by the false god or Lord of Darkness to worship him instead of the true God. So in regards to this, I think a lot of dualism was also adapted into Jesus' belief, because he's traveling, looking at all different religions, taking bits on, building up his own philosophy, recognizing what was messed up in his time, which was going on with the children, took it over, which was near the end of his life, which is the reason they killed him. Unless you read the Gospel of John, and it's because of the rising of Lazarus. Both of these cases would be viewed as taboo within Judaism. A raising of a dead person would be viewed within the Pharisee movement and Sadducees as necromancy, as Egyptian black magic. Basically, they would hate it. So that's basically a death sentence. But I think the raising of dead as well, because people were buried alive a lot, they had people to see if someone was actually dead. And sometimes that was viewed as bringing back someone as well. If someone wasn't breathing and a doctor came and brought them, I brought you back to life, basically. Sometimes it was regarded as a divine miracle. Sometimes it was wasn't the doctor or the prophet or whatever, but it was God himself. Sometimes it was the prophet, regarding on what cultural belief and background. We have early pictures of Jesus with a wand, a staff. Moses was using a wand or a staff. But in regards to prophecy, some of the prophetic cases of even Jesus was associated with another man. I think it was, I wrote it down, just see if I got it here.
And while you're looking at it,
name was Jesus something. But he was declared as a madman, this other Jesus. He was crushed to death by a boulder during the revolt of the Jewish people, where the Jewish temple ended up being destroyed. But he was stating that Jerusalem would fall the whole time. Then he was crushed by a boulder. But before this incident, he was actually handed in by the Jewish high priest to the Romans. He was tortured by the Romans. They declared him a madman and let him go, because the whole time he was being tortured, he didn't mock, or he didn't resent anger towards those beating him or mocking him. All he kept saying was, Jerusalem's going to fall. Woe to Jerusalem. Woe to me. Jerusalem's going to fall. And the boulder comes and crushed him. But the writer of Matthew, which was more Jewish influence, would have seen this and added it in with Jesus. So we've got all these stories are added in later. Like Gospel of Thomas is the oldest. We don't see any miracles. We just see sayings. So wise words. But I believe he was a healer, because there's a scene, I believe in what particular gospel? I believe it's either in Mark or John, but there's a boy with epilepsy. And the word they use is Jesus uses a remedy to heal him. And that's narcotics, basically. That's a drug to apply medicine onto the young boy, basically. So it would have been cannabis, would have been the holy oil, which can be used to treat epilepsy today. That same oil that they were using as holy oil. And it was even used as incense. They breathe it all in. This was going out for ancient Canaanite cultures, Zoroastrians, the Egyptians, the Mesopotamian people. I dislike when I say Sumerian because I feel like that's just me being lazy. So the Mesopotamian people, they would
that's you know what, I'm glad you said that, because that's the perfect way. Like I said, it's so hard to stop saying the Sumerians, because that's what everybody put in my head when I first started learning about this. Well, it was the Sumerians, no, the Sumerians is just a small part of it. The Mesopotamians, it was the Mesopotamians, a group of individuals. It just wasn't the Sumerians, because even before the Sumerians, we have the Ubadians, and they definitely contributed to what the Mesopotamians did. Matter of fact, the Ubadians inhabited the land of Sumer before the Sumerians. So definitely, I'm glad you said that, because that's something that needs to stop being said so much, is that it's the Sumerians, especially when it comes to the Anunnaki and the Enuna and all this other stuff. It's not the Sumerians, it's literally Mesopotamians. And they literally had thousands of gods, to the point where everywhere you go, you was worshiping a different god. Every city state had their own god. Every event had a god. Like you said, like there was a god for healing, there was a god for music, there was a god for dancing, there was a god for writing, there was a god for building bricks, metallurgy. I mean, so on and so forth. There was gods for every single different thing. If a woman wanted to get pregnant and she wanted to have a child, and she wanted to have her son, she would probably pray to Inanna, Ishtar. She would have probably prayed to her. Maybe she would have probably prayed to men. Say what?
They even had like penis sculptures as well, especially in Greece, that they would rub and pray to the god.
I was going to say they was going to rub. Certain men would walk up to him if they couldn't, because if they wanted to have a son and they couldn't, and they know that the woman was fertile because she had children before. So of course they assumed that it was the male that couldn't. After, he would go rub those statues, like you said, he would go up there and rub them. And he would, and it was a certain amount of times you would have to rub it. I just think about that. Yo, I can't have a kid. Let me go rub this statue real quick so the God can help me out. Hell no, I ain't doing no shit like that. But I'm just going to keep trying to get in the sheets. Fuck everything else, man. But that's what I'm just saying.
Babylonians too. They carried on a lot of that culture as well.
That's what I'm saying.
With the temple priestesses.
They had this stuff out there. That's what I'm saying. Mesopotamians literally had it's crazy about that. And I'm telling you, I'm glad you liked my theory before, because I have another theory in my head just based off of all the stuff. We should talk about that soon, because I really, man, it's crazy. Look, all right. So let me bring this up real quick, because you brought something up that caught my attention. You mentioned the word demons, right?
Yep, Damon. I was about to bring them up too, being gods.
Now,
and lesser gods as well, multiple gods, and ancestors.
Now, what is a god? A god is a wise individual. God has knowledge. A god is honorable. God is all these things, right? Well, in the book of Plato, in one of the books of Plato's, Cratylus, Cratylus, you can see it here. Let me make it a little bigger. It's up here. It says right here, it says, and therefore I have the most entire conviction that he called them demons, because they were daemons, knowing or wise, in our older Attic dialect, the word itself occurs. Now he and other poets say truly that when a good man dies, he has honor and a mighty portion among the dead, and becomes a demon, which is a name given to him, signifying wisdom. And I say too that every wise man who happens to be a good man is more than human. Okay, and then it goes on right there. But what's interesting is Lil Vibe, and Lil Vibe, anybody that knows Lil Vibe, if you go to his TikToks and stuff like that, his stuff is amazing. He does music, and he just go to his stuff. But anyway, he
also found demigods and heroes as well, because in particular times they were also called daemons as well.
Yeah, and see, this is why I like sharing what I've learned, and I love people that bring sources, because when you started this, you brought sources. When we watched that video of yours, you brought sources to the table. Nobody just had to take your word for it. They could see that your source was popped up. Now it's up to them to do their due diligence and read on what you researched, right? And then have a conversation or ask you questions on why did you say what you said if it wasn't that, if they found something incorrect. But the point was you brought sources to the table, and I like that. So when I shared that thing about the demons and stuff, Lil Vice shared this with me, and this was a book that he wrote, and I'm very familiar with this author and this individual. But then he also, what I like is what we was talking about. He put, while the term holy guardian angel used in this capacity appears to have originated with the sacred magic of the Abra Maline the Mage, the concept of a personal divinity entity is unquestionably much older. Zoroaster writes of the, I don't know how to say this word, Agathos daemon, a personal guardian spirit who must be contacted before any theurgic ceremony is initiated. Okay. And then he goes, and then it goes on there and talk about that. But at the end of it, the last thing, it says Socrates called his daemon genius.
Yep.
Right.
That's another word for it. Genius spirit as well is another word for it as well. Some people confuse them for genies, but they're not. Sometime later on, they become like lesser gods in a sense, like a spirit. Before that, you had spirits that interplayed in the whole human world that would bring about gifts, and you'd see great men form because they were blessed by this certain god or this spirit daemon. Then they made lesser spirits that in turn could be somewhat trickster, but also help play a part in the world. And so you had higher gods, higher daemons, and lesser daemons as well. So it's interesting.
Nah, and look, it's interesting because I brought up his profile, and like I said, he has his music out and stuff. Like, I got to shout out to him because I do like his stuff and I do support everybody. But he helped me on my journey because I was like, okay, why would they call demons wise men? Why would they call them honorable? Right? Why would they say this? And just because I read something doesn't mean that it's accurate. And I've read other stuff like that. Like I said, I read Socrates, I read Plato's books. I know what they say. But to have somebody else come behind and say, hey, look, I read this in this book and it backs up what you said. Now I'm questioning more about what is a demon, right? Because you just said that demons were known as gods.
Yeah.
They were a type of a god. They just weren't the god.
Censorship.
Say that one time.
Been changed.
No, that one time.
Oh, sorry. I was saying it's because of censorship it got changed to be evil, basically. Before that, they were regarded as honorable.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just so many. I'm telling you, man, it's so much information out there that just trying to get out there and see what is truly honest and what is accurate is hard, right? Because everybody's going off of what their personal feelings are. But that's why I like to have books to read from those time frames. Like a lot of my books are old as hell, like really, really old. Yes, some of them are reprinted, of course, but they're really old books. And I go in there and I read this stuff, and you can see that most of this stuff is repeated over and over and over and over and over and over again. And that's when you start realizing, okay, there's a whole nother story on that. But is there anything else you want to talk about, bro? Our next discussion would be on Jesus. That's what you wanted to do, right?
Yeah, on a historical Jesus as well. Yeah.
Okay, because you know what?
That sort of stuff. But yeah, whichever. If you want to continue to chat, otherwise I'm happy with this, Tyrone. Otherwise I can continue on something else.
No, go ahead. I know I interrupted you, so I didn't know if there was anything else that you wanted to bring up, because I know our next discussion was Jesus, and I was going to tell you, I got the life of Jesus, Jesus Christ, the volumes from Venerable and Catherine Emmerich. That was also from a long time ago, and they're both from the same books. Like, see, it's the blue ones and the red ones, right? Like, hold on, the blue ones is Mary.
Just found a name, by the way. With the regard of the Jesus telling a prophecy, it was Jesus Ben Ananias. So he was declared a madman who was crushed to death. You could type that in on Google even if you wanted to as well. But yeah, there's a Wikipedia article on him. It was recorded by the Jewish people as well, which is pretty cool. Yeah, I love the backgrounds on the books. They're beautiful.
Yeah, man, I'm telling you, bro. Like we can do this, but let me. Do you believe Jesus was crucified, or do you believe he was?
I believe he was crucified. I don't think he died on the cross, though. Well, I think he was placed on it, as a rebel for what he did for freeing the children. Because there's interesting things that you wouldn't add in because of embarrassing. And there's some embarrassing stuff that's been censored in regards to Jesus. So after he's freed the children, they've put him on the cross. They've tried to give him a love potion mixed in with myrrh. So this is interesting. I believe that's in John. I have the translation on my thing. It might be even on Mark. It might be in the Gospel of Mark. I have to look up on my translations because I've got to release them so anyone that wants them can go through it. But the actual text states they gave him a love potion. So they're trying to give him an erection on the cross, because most times they were naked on their cross. In biblical art, you see him with a robe and all sort of stuff, but this is more to hide nudity as well. And it's later, because a lot of people start talking about crucifixions after they basically stopped doing them. So they started putting paintings in them and stuff, you know, well, with the Roman wise, got lost the time, the knowledge of how that was actually performed back then. Execution methods changed with the time. So they've tried to give him this. They've also given him on the cross, when he's cried out he's thirsty, the drink that he accepts is an antidote. They go to the tomb to rub herbs on his body. They don't do this in Jewish customs. And these are aloe vera and healing herbs. So there's a scene as well in regards to Pontius Pilate asking if Jesus was dead already. And with inside knowledge or gnosis from the centurion, he states that yes. So, but this means inside knowledge. So this could possibly translate to, not saying it's 100% accurate, but it could translate to that this centurion knew he wasn't dead, or Pilate knew he wasn't dead, or the centurion, most likely, because I suggest that because a lot of the first Christians were also a part of the Roman army as well. So, yeah, there's lots of reasons why Christianity was ultimately changed, especially if you're going to have Roman soldiers rebelling against the empire itself, you know, taking on actions like Jesus. That's problematic. So they had to censor the text, they had to add in other pagan customs in with it to also convert the other populations as well and make it political, which is the story we have. So the biblical Jesus is different to the historical man himself. We have a rebel of sorts, but a peaceful one, not like the zealots that were up for the sword, which is some reason why they didn't like Jesus. And after Jesus' death, they were persecuting early Jewish Christian followers because they disliked that they were turning away from their traditional form of Judaism. But again, what is traditional form of Judaism when Judaism itself was diverse with different gods? It was polytheistic, and then it became monotheistic. In regards to that, they even believed that some believed it was El or Yahweh had children, they had other gods, but they only worship one God out of all these gods. This was even done in the ancient past. And I remember when I was a kid, with regarding football, for instance, I liked Crows, but because of one player. Once that player left, I chose the other team. And when that player left, I didn't care about football anymore. So I see the same case with gods. People choose one God out of what they want for that specific trait or specific blessing, or to gain favor from that certain deity above other deities, so they worship that one deity instead of all others, but they don't reject their existence, which was going on about ancient Judaism. They accepted other gods, and some even believed that God appeared to other humans in certain forms, and they called that God a certain name. Some believed Zeus was Yahweh. This will be seen as heretical now, but this was a common belief in the ancient past. There was belief that Zeus was also, I forgot the other god's name in ancient Egypt, but a lot of gods have different versions of them, or could be attributed to. Like El was attributed to Saturn, Yahweh was later attributed to Saturn, but originally would have been, say, Jupiter,
right? Yeah,
etc. So
no, I know what you mean. So I think it. So so I found a Christian website, www.christianwebsite.com.
That's the one there. You found it. Thank you. So if you go into the Greek text on that one, you'll be able to find it.
The what?
So that word for wine that they've used doesn't just mean wine. I might go into the text itself if I can look it up as well in Greek, but it can mean potion as well, and love potion. Matthew, is it? Oh, Mark. Thank you. If that makes sense, that was the last translation I just translated too.
Here we go. Myrrh.
You don't want the myrrh one. You want what they use for wine.
For the one for wine.
Yeah. So you need that word that's mixed in, because that's mixed in with that myrrh. But myrrh was a sex drug as well. It could be made implied because it was one of the key ingredients for sex drugs.
Yeah, these words, man.
Wasn't Mark again?
Shoot, I don't know.
I just forgot what verse it was.
Let me see. That's Mark 15:23. You know what? I got my New Jerusalem Bible here. Let me pull this up real quick.
Because I'm going to put up the
15.
Greek text. Because the Greek text are the oldest ones.
Let's see what I say. Mark 15.
All right.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just going to copy and paste the word. It'll let me. It's been difficult. All right, good. I copied it.
I'm trying to see.
All right.
I'm looking in the back of the index to see if I can find.
Cool.
It has an index in here. See if it has anything like that.
Translate the Neos. Wine. That's the Bible version. I don't want that one because they're going to censor it. Oh, here you go. I think this one here, not this one's Reddit. Fuck's sake, I didn't want the Reddit one. But anyway, it could be the word there could be used for a potion and love potion. Let's see if we can actually find it here. Anyway.
I'm telling you, man, trying to find all these definitions and words, man, you'll lose your mind. Let me just shoot.
Yeah, it's a good thing about looking at the original language.
Because it does, so many words can mean one thing. Definitely.
Yes.
What I say? Mark? Yeah, Mark. 1660.
Yeah, potion and a social lubricant, like an alcohol as well. There we go. Love potion, as it were. There we go. It should be here. Wine as well. Fire wine, which God in his wrath is represented as mixing and given to those whom is about to punish by their own folly and madness as well. A love potion, as it were, wine exciting to fornication, so sex drug. So they're trying to give this to Jesus on the cross because they want to give him an erection to mock him for freeing the children.
Where was that at? 15.
That's in that verse, what you just did. Yeah, the word that you use is onios. So it's spelled, I'll tell you how to spell it. It's O-I-N-O-S, basically.
Hold on, let me look at O-I-N-O-S.
There's also a mean. But yeah, if you go to that verse in, what is it? You can also find it in Luke 2.23.
Oh, yeah, it sure is.
Yeah, so you find it as love potion. If you can see that, share the screen so other people can see that as well. So this is what they hide from you. So the reason all this is censored is because they didn't want people being like Jesus running through brothels, saving children and rebelling against authority. The reason they have Jesus lifting up into the sky because they didn't want people to be Christ-like themselves, because Jesus states the Son of Man is within you. Another thing is when he goes up to the people and says that I am Jesus, arrest me. Do not arrest them. I think that's in Luke. The reason why is because he's protecting the children and his disciples. So he's saying, arrest me. I'm the one that's did this, and they're shocked. So they take him. But the whole arrest that they did was an illegal arrest. A kangaroo court, they would call it. So it was arrest to drag him to court illegally. So there's a reason why an illegal arrest, which is cool.
15:23. Let me look this up real quick before I forget. Mark 15:23. I want to see what word they used in this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I can probably show you a screen here. There's the word here. Onios. Wine as well. So let's go further down so you can see love potion too. Under here. Camera.
You should be able to screen share it.
Yeah, I don't know how to do it.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I see it now. Oh yep, love potion. Yep, I see it. Metaphorically, love potion. Yep, I see it.
Yep.
But see right here, it says, let's see.
But yeah, what makes it a love potion is when it's mixed with myrrh. That's the giveaway. Because if you type in myrrh can cause erection, it can. It can be, it's a stimulant. It can be used as that. It can also be used as a perfume. It can be used as an incense. So a burner for incense. It was a holy incense. Frankincense and myrrh were both considered holy. They were used as cleansing temples, cleansing houses, cleansing the individual or the body, which was also regarded as a temple for the soul, which is a treasure, which is like the temple for the house of God, the body for the house of the spirit, the house of God within.
Yeah, it doesn't even give you any information on that on here.
Yep, they're trying to hide a lot of stuff.
It says it literally just says they offered him wine mixed with myrrh, but he refused it.
Yeah,
Then
that's the
they
reason why he
crucified
refused
him.
it. Because Jesus was educated, and being a medical healer, if he was healing people, he would know what certain
But wouldn't that go
objects
against?
would use.
But wouldn't that go against him dying for us? And then if he, because that would just prolong his life, right? Because wine, water, whatever would keep him hydrated, basically, right? But
in a sense.
So but then he also did question God himself on the cross.
Yeah. So always had, well, everyone's going to suffer, especially like that. So it's no doubt he was a human just like the rest of us. But I say the reason that he's rejected that is because he knew what they were trying to give him. I don't think they're just trying to extend his life. I think they were actually trying to give him an erection. Otherwise, why would they give him something that couldn't cause an erection? So that's sus. And they want to mock him for that. There's actually someone on, and I don't want to mention any names because I don't like this person in a sense, that claims that Jesus was on the opposite side of the fence here, that he was the one in the wrong. But no, he was actually in the right, freeing children and shit. So this other child doesn't like to state this. I don't want to give any names, but if he's watching, fuck him. So, but I show these sources for this reason, especially because this shows a moral action, morality, questioning something that was evil that was going on. And if you look in the Talmud, for instance, it mentions 9 to 14-year-old girls were also married. So if you see all this tradition, you see Jesus saving children, saying, bless children. Those who make the children lose faith in me are best to go top themselves, string a rope around them with a millstone and throw themselves in the ocean. That's basically saying that the children of God are not for sale. So this is one reason why Jesus was killed.
You're not the first person I heard say that.
Killed. Yeah,
you're not the first person I heard say that. That actually brought up that scripture too. I can never remember it, but maybe I should because I've heard that multiple times.
What makes this a big deal too, Tyrone, is Jesus is the first person to do so. The very first man that I've seen in the historical records to actually save children this way, to stand up against the sex trade. The first individual, in my knowledge and regards, not the first to stand up against human sacrificing. Buddha was before Jesus, and he was mortified by human sacrificing in his country, and this is what led him to a peaceful path. So there were many people of light that walked this earth to bring love to this world, to make humanity better. Even the form of government was made to protect us from ourselves. Religion itself was a way of protecting humanity from itself as well. It wasn't just for control. Yes, to control the masses, to protect it from itself. You know, so we could be downright terrifying. That's for sure.
Yeah. So because see, I've read what you talked about. I've actually read in different texts, you know, and it just boggles the mind that there are people out there that will just say that's how it was back then.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
I just can't. Me personally.
There's always good people on this earth that have called out wrongness on it. For instance, Plato. I don't know how I got Apollo. Plato first, he didn't mind homosexuality, but when he's seen older men seducing younger boys, he was mortified by it, and he said this act is evil. He didn't care about males between warriors loving each other, but when he's seen the practice of younger people carrying on, he disliked it. So he associated all homosexuality as wrong. Because of that. But that term wasn't really used back then. The word pedestry was used, which later come to mean our word for, the nasty. But back then it just meant anyone that practiced anal sex, male or female.
I like how you always bring the origins of the words to play, because that it using the right words is how we understand things. They could have hid a lot of things just using the right words, right?
Yeah.
Servant. Well, what is a servant? That can be anybody, right?
Yeah.
There are people who call waitresses servants, right? So,
Yeah.
but they get paid for what they do. They serve food, right?
Yeah.
So just using the words is very important. Just to me personally, I just can't understand that why Mary had to have this happen at that age. Why did she have to be that young? Like, if God can control everything, and if he came here to save us in the flesh, which is in Jesus' form, which some people have told me, then why wait? Why pick Mary at that age? At
On a
that
religious
age,
mindset wise, you could probably say, like, I'm not going to say this is the reason I'm not one for religion. I'm spiritual, not religious. But on a religious mind, they could say it took something out of the darkness to bring light as well.
Yeah, I've heard that. I've actually heard that, but that does not. It still doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
And it's Jesus flipped tables. That should tell you enough.
He flipped tables over it. He didn't like the practice.
As nice as. First of all, when I hear somebody flipping tables, I don't think of somebody.
You also whip them too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm not.
Imagine if today, if you went to a political rally, and you flip the table and start whipping the president.
That's what I'm
that
saying.
Would be a no-go. That's basically what he kind of did. Well, not so much the thing. Imagine whipping the whole Senate, I should say.
Yeah,
so that's basically his thing. He whipped the political authority. So
he was pissed. He was pissed about something.
Yeah, and it wasn't just birds. It was obviously for this reason. It's a hidden of words,
and that's what I'm saying is that, people, they have this idea that Jesus he was just a very, very calm, collective, really nice person. No, you can't be calm without bringing the storm with you. You know what I mean? Or behind you. Everybody has their breaking point. And some people just at some point in some people's lives, you just don't care. And as you get older, that's what happens. That's why you have older people just say whatever the hell they want to say. You don't have no idea how I heard how many times I hear a senior citizen, 65, 70-year-old dude or woman, in the store just, man, fuck this shit. You know what I'm saying? Y'all stupid. Like, at some point, and that person could have been the nicest person in their 20s, 30s, 40s, and 50s. But at that certain age, when the same repetitive dumbness keeps happening, they get upset. And just to know that Jesus was flipping tables and whipping people and, yelling and, telling them off, I just can picture what that would mean, because I can see myself doing some shit like that. Like,
man, especially.
Like, don't you guys get it?
That's human nature to defend children as well, or even a pregnant woman or a woman. It's a natural instinct to help that individual. That's our humanity. So I see that as place. People just see that, he got angry because they were changing money and charging top dollar. But it's like, why were children there praising him? So they don't see the connection. Like, that's the moral that they should be doing. I've argued with people that say, there's nothing wrong with praising him. Like, where's morality? Sorry, Tyron, you continue.
The children, I was just going to say, children praised him while the adults hated him. How does that happen?
Yeah.
How does that happen? Just think about that for a second.
Yeah, man.
You have all these adults saying Jesus ain't shit, want to kill him, spitting in his face, walking him down with a cross on his back, whipping his ass in public.
Yeah. Also, women loved him too. Women and children both loved him.
The children loved him.
Yeah.
Now, how does that happen?
Yeah, that's the only way that makes sense.
That should make you think about what was really going on and what did he die for.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? What did he really die for? Because
I know what else makes
he
sense
died
too.
for our sins, but we're still sinning. I'm not doing that goddamn type of sin. So he
when Christianity was introduced to Rome as well, child rights was introduced. So that proves it as well. That was by the 3rd century. So it took all these Christians dying, sticking up for children, until child rights was introduced. So, and then again, censored. We can't have that no more. Bury this, and it's dodgy.
See, this is the thing that gets me, is that the Holy Bible is a great book. I love the Holy Bible because if you read the Bible, you will learn so much about history if you do your due diligence and research everything within that Bible.
Yeah.
Starting with everything, like, okay, the first part of the Bible is creation stories. Read about 20 creation stories. Matter of fact, all you have to do is read the main creation stories on each continent. Well, minus Antarctica, because we don't have any any ancient text from there yet. But if you really want to understand the Bible, you have to understand all the creation stories from around the world, and the multiple ones that are in Mesopotamia, from the Atram Hasis, the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Numa Elish. They have so many different flood stories. Noah in the Bible, you just can't read that, so you have to read them. And like I said, reading these different texts, it just tells me that there were individuals from the age of 9 to 14 and up, from 9 years old and up, were given to certain places to do certain types of duties. However you want, whatever word you want to use for it, it wasn't always in the good, it was in the bad. Okay, there are stories of that. In many ways, the Virgin Mary story sounds like a cover-up. Somebody important in that temple did something they weren't supposed to do, and now we have the Virgin Mary story.
Yep.
And then,
or they were also allowing in Romans to come to the temple for bribes, and
and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So just the different theories out there. I understand that people want to believe in God, but the God in the Old Testament is not the same type of God that Jesus was. Jesus actually did many things of what God said to do, even though we were told to follow what those Mosaic laws were.
Yep.
But we
this
don't.
Also got the story of Lucifer rebelling against God. It's Jesus rebelling against this God. There's even Gnostic Christians that believe when Jesus was crucified, it was actually not him being crucified, but it was Yahweh being crucified. So this is why he goes, "Why are you forsaking me?" or whatever. But it's interesting. It's very interesting.
It boggles my mind because, like I said, it doesn't matter what your belief is. Facts is facts. I don't care what you believe. Tell me how you believe what you believe, and give me the information that tells you. Don't just say, "Well, you got to have faith." That doesn't do shit for me.
Yeah. That's one thing
I don't want to hear have faith and you just got to believe in this, because I could be praying to the wrong God. I literally can be praying to the wrong one. And you're telling me that, if you know your Bible. No, do you know your Bible? Because obviously there are different gods in that Bible. It literally says one of them is a jealous God.
Yeah. One thing I liked about Gnostics, they told people to read every text, what you just told other people to do as well. And they said that salvation is not obtained through blind faith, rather through knowledge.
Yeah, it's
that's what sets us free.
It sets us free, bro.
Yep.
That's the information that I say that, if you read, I don't care how many books. I've heard people say, you got to read the older books. You got to read the older books and don't read the new books because they're fake. A lot of the older books were revised like 4 or 5 times.
Yep.
So which one you want me to read? Like, for instance, Darwin, he wrote the books on his theory. He has 4 or 5 different versions on those theories. So which one? He even says that he made mistakes, but a lot of people don't know that because they read the one that he says something incorrectly on, and then read the newer version of it to see that he corrected himself at that. Now you still stuck on the thing that he literally corrected himself. People can correct themselves later on, and those are the people that I look up to, because if you can say, "Hey, I was wrong at this moment, and this is why I was wrong, and I'm gonna show you why it's actually correct this time," then I'm gonna believe you. Right? But even then, at that time, when I first read that first information, I believed you then because that was the information you gave me. But to acknowledge that you could have been wrong is what's a step forward. So you have to read.
Yeah, man. Actually, there's something actually cool I can mention on here, because I've made some mistakes in regards to my older Gnostic videos, because you have new information that gets presented. And so there's a couple I've made mistakes. So when I do, say, on the Gnostic Catholic Union videos regarding all the different types of Gnosticism, that's my way of correcting myself, basically putting a more updated versions of the said groups. So
That's why I don't. Some people told me and I don't know if I said anything incorrectly. I'm pretty cautious about what I say because I only share what I've read. I don't ever share my opinion, what I think is right or wrong. I just share what I've read. And I can tell you, people have asked me for my opinion plenty of times. They say, "Hey, man, what's your opinion about this?" And I'm like, "Well, I can't really say something because if I say my opinion today, by the end of the day, when I'm finished with this book or reading something else or watching a different video, my opinion may change." And it's not because I didn't do enough research, because I literally read so much information out there that every time when I read something, I get confused on what I'm supposed to be knowing. Like you said, different names of gods. Like I know the different names of gods if I read them. Like if I read a book that has 1,000 different names of gods, I would know each one of those different names if I read them. It's like a song in my head. Like I can get in my truck right now, turn my music up loud, and sing a song perfectly from the beginning to the end. Now, if you tell me to do it without the song playing in the background, I'm only going to get a couple of words from that song, right? So, for the most part, for me, it's hard to remember this stuff, bro. And honestly, man, trying to understand everything that's been said, that's even a challenge in itself, because you get to the point where, okay, I've read this about this God. He's supposed to be the God of water. Then I read later on that he's known as the God of wisdom. So which one is it? Is he known as the God of water, or is he known as the God of wisdom? Or is he known as both of them? But then I'll read another thing and then he'll say the same thing. This God is known as the God of wisdom, and this God is known as the God of water. I'm just like, what the And I'm just like, okay, so let me just note. So basically I just put all of that in one little circle and just say, there are many gods known as the gods of wisdom and God of whatever, of water, right? Like I already know that. Like I'm not. And if somebody says, can you name 3 of them? Yeah, I can name 3 of them, but it's going to be kind of hard because I had to think about it. I mean, I can tell you like Enki, Ea, right? Like that's 1 or 2 gods. And then if you actually read some ancient texts, and it's crazy, like I said, the difference between Ea and Enki is also there, but they're known as the same God in so many cases. But then you're like, hey, these are different gods. Then you get into a concept of gods being brothers, and then one being the father and the one being the brother and one being the son, and it just gets so confusing to remember all that stuff. So when people make absolutes, to me it just seems like, okay, you're just going with one of the theories that makes sense to you. You don't care about the other ones, because when the other ones are presented, you say, oh, I'm not worried about that. I worry about all of that, because like you said, who is Jesus? Jesus traveled everywhere, and there's a time that we didn't have information about him and where he was at, right? We don't know what happened to him.
Yeah, basically. The oldest source we have is the Gospel of Thomas. And because not all of them, because there's all different versions of the Gospel of Thomas. The oldest is a Greek and it's only fragments.
Yeah.
We've lost the original because the Roman Catholic Church kept burning it.
It just boggles my mind, man. So like I said, man, I love these conversations with you, bro. Like we have these conversations a lot, and it's interesting because, like I said, I'll watch your videos and I'll be like, oh man, I just read something about it. And every time I watch one of your videos, and I've watched like 95% of your videos, I don't watch them all the time when they come out, but like I have my second screen right here, right? And when I'm working on an article or reading a book and I see you posted something, I'll have it pop up on the background for just so I can have something to listen to while I'm doing my article. And I'll be like, okay, this is a good topic that I need to listen to. So when I play it, I take little notes of it, right, while I'm doing my articles or whatever I'm doing. And I'll be like, man. And then probably like within 24, 48 hours, something just clicks and I'll reach something about it. And that's why I said I wanted to do this one on here, because your last video was about Yahweh and so on and so forth, and it had the different names. And we've already did a discussion on the Virgin Mary earlier. And we wanted to do a round 2 on this just to make it get more in depth in it. And remember, you did a video on this before on it, and that's why I played that video from earlier, because I was like, I know he did a video on this before months ago. And that's the one that I played. So yeah, man, you always bring fire to the table, man. You always did, and you also have a book, man. Promote your book, bro. You got a copy with you right now? Promote your book, man.
I got a couple. I've got my book here. My book Gnosis for the Ages. I actually want to write another one eventually. My other one I want to do is I want to do a whole bunch of translations. I want to do all Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but I want to add in the Gospel of Mary, the Gospel of Thomas, and I also want to add in the Proto-Gospel of James or the Infancy Gospel of James, and I want to add in the Old Testament's Apocrypha, which is the poetic books that were banned from the Old Testament. So I would like to compile this, maybe a couple of other. I might add in some other translations that aren't my own from the Coptic versions, because I don't know any Coptic at all. It's pieces of Greek, so I feel a bit more comfortable doing that. Also, I've got some damn good translators and encyclopedias and dictionaries as well. That really helps that shit. But yeah, that's what I plan on doing for my next one, so I can give something a bit more authentic for people to gaze at and translate themselves. Because I don't just plan to give them my translations; I plan to give them the actual authentic Greek text itself, the original text, or not the original, but the copies from the original, at least. So. Yeah, or the closest we've got anyway, depending on how you look at it and what gospel accounts, etc. But yeah, so some goodies, a lot of banned stuff that are older than a lot of the, say, canonical text. I will put the canonical text in there, but the correct translations of what. But alternative translations, so that way the people that read it can choose how they translate it, basically. They can choose what word they like the most. So it's how it's meant to be read. It was meant to be read by diverse Christians. So different groups of Christians sharing all these accounts around. It wasn't until the Roman Catholic Church said you can't do that no more. And that's because of dickhead Irenaeus, who wrote against heresy. He was the one that claimed that there's only 4 gospels and all the rest are heresy. Mm-hmm. So he was one man that never met Jesus, who gave him the authority, who gave the Roman Church the authority to kill in Jesus' name, all that sort of stuff. It's like nonsense. But they called everyone else the heretics. In my eyes, anyone that would be a heretic would be someone who sexually assaults and murders in the said name of their God while persecuting their own people. So, that's a heresy. Sorry, heresy towards humanity.
Yep, bro. I'm telling you, it's crazy how religion came to be and what we have today and what people believe. Right, like these little steps that we're at. You can't get two people who will represent their religion to agree on the same thing. They will argue about their own beliefs one way or another. They'll have a foundation of what their belief is, but they will argue about how to get to heaven. Right, and they will do that not by speaking, but by their actions. They'll talk a good game. But when they leave that camera or leave that discussion or whatever, and they go and they're supposed to be that Christian that they're supposed to be, or whatever the case they represent, then we all know that they're not going to do it. Some people will leave church and start cursing because everybody's moving too slow to leave the building.
Yeah,
so it's crazy.
Yeah, 100%. Like people are sometimes too strict on themselves, like even regarding words and stuff as well, what we use. Be more strict on our actions, Like, yeah, we should be strict on what we say 100%. Like, I fuck up all the time. We're all human. But it's our actions that matter more than any bloody word, Like, ultimately, that person can swear and belittle someone else, but that same person that got belittled might go off and kill someone where that person that was doing the belittling wouldn't harm a soul. So, for instance, like that. So it's complicated, but religion can really dumb us down. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely, bro. Definitely. Anything else you want to talk about, bro?
I think that should be good, bro. We've done an hour and a half now. That way we can keep them for next time.
Oh yeah, definitely. So, Nathan, first of all, I've been promoting your YouTube. I know you've seen it up on the screen.
Thank you, bro.
Promote your book one more time. Show your so that book, Gnosis Through the Ages. I got me a copy. Very good. Tell them where you can get it.
Yeah, they get it on eBay. On my channel, you'll find links to the book, so I can click on that and go to eBay. I send about half the profits to the charity as well, so it doesn't just go to my own pocket. It goes towards more books and goes to the homeless shelter. Anything that I promote goes towards charity. So I always make sure I do something good, because I find there's a lot of people who claim to be spiritual masters and they just pocket the money and live their good lives. You see them with all fancy shirt. This is an old bum shirt, man. It's got a fucking hole in it. But, you know? So it's like they spend it on this, but they're not so much doing charity. But I feel like I'm rough around the edges, I swear sometimes, and you know, or I might debate and stuff, but I try behind closed doors. I do the best I can, you know. I don't brag about my charities so much like I do it. You know, I show things. I don't go, say, into the building and show all the homeless people that I'm going to do something. I don't like that stuff. You know, I feel like it's more of a show pony. I just show me going to the building, the former sign that I've given them something. Yeah. And on the way to the homeless shelter, I like to give stuff to the homeless I see along the way sometimes as well. If I don't get a taxi, if I walk there, that I don't show because otherwise that's me seeking fame. And I follow the teachings of Jesus still, though I'm not perfect. But I don't like to brag about what I do. I'd rather brag about knowledge I learn and share knowledge. You know, like you tell me you know Jesus, I'll tell you I know a secret. I'll give you some real knowledge. You know, so
you know, I'm the same way, bro. I love knowledge, bro. I love reading. Like right after this, bro, I'm gonna pick these books up and start reading again. It's almost addictive to me, man. Like just reading is very addictive to me, and I love sharing what I share. You know, I love doing what I do. You know, I took all this equipment that I bought for myself, you know, the lights, the cameras, the monitors, the printers, you know, all this stuff just to share what I've learned. And I love it. I love it to the T. I can't get enough of it. I just love it. I love doing this. And just to know that when I share something and then, you know, I really take it serious. So I really take it serious when somebody says that I'm wrong about something or I need to do more research. You can't tell somebody if that's all they do is research. You can't tell them to do more research, especially when they're not even doing what they're supposed to do. You know what I'm saying?
I understand that completely.
Yeah,
it annoys me sometimes too.
Yeah. Hold on, let me see something real quick. My screen just went out on something. There we go. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can still hear you.
Okay. Good. All right, good. All right, man. Well, I guess we'll close it up. We'll set up another one, man. We'll set up.
No worries.
I appreciate it, man. Hey, Nathan, Spiritual Level of Being. Check him out on YouTube. Hey, bro. Peace out, man. Love it, bro.
Peace and love, brother.
I'm gonna end this up now.